In this unit, we are going to be examining some classroom examples to decide the type and quality of collaboration that is evident in the learning activity. Let's recap by looking at the decision tree for collaboration. As you learned in the previous unit, the decision tree for collaboration is built around 4 questions, and each question corresponds to a big idea in collaboration. So the first question asks if students are required to work in pairs or groups. If not, then the learning activity is coded at a 1. If they do work in pairs or groups, then you need to ask the next question: do students have shared responsibility? If the answer is no, then the learning activity is coded at a 2. If yes, you ask the next question: do students make substantive decisions together? If it's a no, then it's a code 3. If yes, you move to the next question, which asks, is the students' work interdependent? If it's no, then it's a 4. If it's a yes, then it's a code 5. As we said earlier, this decision tree can also be represented as a rubric. As you can see, each of the numbers 1 to 5 outline the criteria for the conditions of the code. For example, to achieve a code 2, students do work together, but they do not have shared responsibility. You can decide which you find easier to use, the decision tree or the rubric, when we are coding the following learning activities. We are now going to code a number of anchor lessons. It is important to note that these anchor lessons, which are learning activities, are not sample or model or exemplar lessons. While they are lessons that have been designed and used by teachers, they have been deliberately selected to initiate discussion around learning design, and in this case, different forms of collaboration. That is why they are referred to as anchor lessons, as they help anchor our thoughts around collaboration. We are not making judgments on these lessons, neither are we thinking about, I would have designed this learning activity in a certain way. We are simply looking for evidence of collaboration. Remember, these are not scores, but codes, which describe the type of collaboration present in the learning activity. Please download the learning activity entitled House on Mango Street. When you've done this, carefully read it, then make a decision about the level of collaboration that you find in this learning activity. In deciding how to code it, you need to be able to point to evidence in order to justify the code you select. Remember, you are not looking for what you think you might do. Instead, you are looking for evidence to support the code you are going to give this learning activity. Having examined the House on Mango Street anchor lesson, please indicate the code you assign this learning activity. We would encourage you to join the discussion area where you can share your views on how you coded this learning activity. What code did you assign House on Mango? What evidence can you point to in order to substantiate your decision? The House on Mango Street learning activity is a code 2. The students do work together, but they do not have shared responsibility. Where did we get the evidence for this? On step 4 of the learning activity, it reads, work in pairs with another student. Read your partner's poem. Think about the following questions and use them to provide feedback to help your partner edit or improve his or her poem. So, as you can see, students work in pairs to give each other feedback, but there is no shared ownership of the task. One student still owns the poem that the other student is helping to improve. Now, please download the learning activity entitled Mr. Sunny Day. When you've done this, carefully read it, then make a decision about the level of collaboration that you find in this learning activity. In deciding how to code it, you need to be able to point to evidence in order to make and justify this code. Remember, you are not looking for what you think you might do. Instead, you are looking for evidence to support the code you are giving this learning activity. Having examined Mr. Sunny Day, please indicate the code you are going to assign this learning activity. As before, we would encourage you to join the discussion area where you can share your views on how you coded the activity. What code did you assign Mr. Sunny Day? And what evidence can you point to in order to substantiate your decision? The evidence points to indicate that Mr. Sunny Day is a code 4. Students do have shared responsibility and they do make substantive decisions together about the content, process, or product of their work. But their work is not interdependent. On page 4 of the learning activity, it reads, each student pair will design a house for Mr. Sunny Day that will stay cool in summer or warm in winter. It will be even better if the house can do both. You will build a miniature model of your design and conduct a few experiments to see if it works. Afterwards, you will write a letter to Mr. Sunny Day to explain your findings and recommendations using elements of structured writing you've learned in English class. From this, we can determine that students are required to make substantive decisions together about the hypotheses and variables to manipulate in their experiment. However, the lesson as designed does not eliminate the possibility that one student could complete all of the work. Now, please download the learning activity entitled Olympic Site Selection. When you've done this, carefully read it. Then make a decision about the level of collaboration that you find in this learning activity. In deciding how to code it, you need to be able to point to evidence in order to justify this code. Remember, you are not looking for what you think you might do. Instead, you are looking for evidence to support the code you are going to give this learning activity. Having examined Olympic site selection, please indicate the code you assigned this learning activity. As before, we would encourage you to join the discussion area where you can share your views on how you coded the activity. What code did you assign Olympic site selection? What evidence can you point to in order to substantiate your decision? The evidence points to a code 5 for this learning activity. This means that students do have shared responsibility and they do make substantive decisions together about the content, process, or product of their work, and their work is interdependent. The evidence for a code 5 is found on page 4. The second bullet reads, each team member is a specialist in his field and will research the 4 sites to determine the advantages and the disadvantages of each location. Be sure to find current information on the internet to make sure that current environmental trends are taken into account. The team will then compile its findings and determine the best location for the Olympic Games. And the last bullet point states, the final product will be a business letter to the IOC recommending one site for the Games. The letter will discuss team findings with respect to all 3 sciences. The team will also produce a chart showing the strengths and weaknesses of each location. These bullet points indicate that students must work together in groups to do this activity, and they share responsibility for the work. The students must also make substantive decisions together that require negotiation. In particular, the seismologist, the volcanologist, and the geologist must integrate what they have learned to reach a group decision about which country to recommend as a site for the Olympics. Group members must write a letter to the IOC justifying their decision. The information provided by each group member from their research is a vital part, as the letter must discuss team findings with respect to all 3 sciences. Now that you've examined a number of anchor lessons, you can see how the rubric for collaboration is a useful framework when designing learning activities in order to develop students' collaborative skills. In the next unit, you will examine a video case study of collaboration in action.